Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of JavaScript, continuing along with our journey through Eloquent JavaScript, the book by Marjan Haverbeek. Talking about maps today. All a part of Chapter 6, The Secret Life of Objects from Eloquent JavaScript. And like I said, today we're talking about maps. What is a map? How you can use a map? I'll go to the first slide. What is a map? Well, a map is essentially, just think of it like key value pairs. For people who come from other programming languages, they have other names that correspond to a map, but that represent key value pairs. So Python, I believe, has dictionaries. Again, essentially key value pairs. You use a key to look up a certain value that's stored in this data structure. Java has maps as well. They have hash maps. There are also value pair. Well, no, that's more from the list interface. It derives from that. Yeah, so array lists, they do have a way to store key value pairs, and they're not in like any set order necessarily. Maps kind of have an order in JavaScript, but not like an array where its indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc., etc. With maps, it's kind of like that, not really. And I think we'll get more clarity on that from looking at the MDN, the Mozilla documentation. So like I said, maps are a data structure that associates values with other values, basically key value pairs. And you can access these key value pairs by using a for of loop when you want to iterate through your map. And how you create a map is by using the new keyword. And there is actually a map, I believe it's an interface in JavaScript. I believe it's an interface where you can create a map and then assign it to a variable. And then as you can see here, you can set the key value pairs. You can also get the values. So if you want to store like your classmate's age, the key would be their name, and then the value would be, an integer, a number, their age. And then you could say, oh, get Chris. And then if you console.log this, you would get 30, as an example. There's also a size property to the map, so you can get the number of key value pairs, similar to like in an array. You can get the length of the array, or the size of the array, the number of items in that array. And then the map class allows for non-string keys, unlike objects. So Marjan in the book talks about how, we've talked about objects before in JavaScript, and objects also have key value pairs, but they work in a very, very different way, because objects inherit from the object prototype. So you're going to get extra things if you try to use an object like a map. And with the advent of this map interface, which was new, I think, with ECSMA 2015, then using this object for reasons that we can take a look at once I pull up REPL, and we can do a couple examples. But as was stated in the previous slide, the map class allows for non-string keys. So when you want to set a key value pair, you could actually have a key of a number. You could do that, like a 1, first, second, third, 1, 2, 3. But if you use an object, they have to be strings. So you have to use words, Chris, John, Jacob, let classmates equal this classmates object. Property names are their names, and then values are their ages. So I guess that's the difference here is you got to think this object here, Chris, is the property, not necessarily the key. You're using this as an object. If you were to use the map, like back here, JavaScript derived from the object.prototype. That means that, and let me see if I can find the passage where Mergen writes this. Plain objects derives this example where you can actually obtain the property value of classmates.toString or just toString in ages. So you're getting the toString property in ages. There's a function or the in keyword. As such, using plain objects as maps is dangerous. There are several possible ways to avoid this problem. First is if you pass null to object.create, the resulting object will not derive from object.prototype and can be safely used as a map. So you just got to kind of be careful about that. And the Mozilla documentation goes into this a little bit further where they actually have a section where they compare objects and maps and the key differences between the two. So with an object, it does contain default keys, properties, because it inherits from from object.prototype. But with a map, there are no keys by default. So in an object, for example, toString, default property, but in a map, it doesn't really have that. In an object, keys must be strings or symbols, but in a map, keys can be of any value. Pretty advantageous. In an object, there is an order. You have to use different methods or loops to access them. So you could use a for-in loop. You can use the object.keys, object.getOwn property names, and be careful here that a for-in loop, you're going to get innumerable string-keyed properties. But if you use object.keys, you're going to get its own innumerable string-keyed properties. Maybe we'll take a look at that because I have to figure out what innumerable actually means. In a map, keys are ordered in order of entry insertion. Okay, so earlier when I was saying they didn't really have an order, maps do have an order. Keys are ordered in the order of entry insertion. So you have like your classmates map. You put Chris in first, John in second, Mike in third as the keys, and then that's how they are. That's how they are ordered in the map. Just pretty straightforward. In an object, the size of the object must be determined manually. So what it means there is you have to manually loop through the properties of the object to get the size of it, the number of the properties. But in map, there is this dot size property. An object is not directly iterable, whereas a map is directly iterable using a for of or a for each loop. In an object, it's not as easy to add or remove pairs, but in a map, you can easily add and remove key value pairs. You can use the set. I believe there was even a delete. So you can use set, get, and I believe there's a delete function, delete method as well. Makes it a lot easier to add and remove key value pairs. In an object, there is native support for parsing from JSON and serialization from the object. So you can JSON.parse, JSON.stringify to change your object into a JSON string and then back into an object, vice versa. But for a map, there really isn't any native support for that. So let's try a few examples. And I'll bring this guy over here. So if you guys can see this, I have this new map. And let's set a couple values. So you can see that the IntelliSense is already telling me, yeah, I've got this set function here, key value. So let's stick with this classmates thing, classmates and their ages. So we've got Mike, he's 30. And just for simplicity, I'm going to copy this. John is 28. And then we've got Ashley is also 28. Now, if we want to grab a value, we could say newMap.get. And I want to get Mike. And you can see it's getting the value of 30. We can pass this to a variable let Mike's age equal newMap dot get Mike, and then as you can see, if we type Mike's age, we should get 30 on this line as well. Yeah. So that's really nice. Setting key value pairs, you can get the value of a certain key. And then if you want to delete, I believe, yeah, there is a delete. So I could delete Mike from this map. That's returning true. And then I don't know, if you check this, if you try to get Mike now, I don't think you're going to get anything back. Undefined. Right. And for further just proof of this, I did see, okay, for each. And let's say for each, key and value. No, we don't need to console.log in here. What if we just say this? Would this do anything? Key and value. Ashley. Okay. But I wonder why it doesn't print John. And what if we didn't have the new map? Still only printing Ashley. Oh, it prints the last. Prints the last one. Right, so the for each does work here. But it's not going to print Mike or John. It'll leave off at Ashley because that's the last index of it. So that's, but again, this is just kind of illustrating that you can loop through each entry of the new map. This is a callback, so the parameters is kind of like destructuring, I guess. You're getting the key value pair, and look at that you have access to each key value pair of each iteration of the new map, so you can see the key and then the value. That is interesting that this seemingly kind of switched key and then value, unless this is really what I kind of mean by that. Argument name clash. So key Ashley value. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit better. Just for clarity's sake. So value actually matches up with Ashley's age there. Yeah. So what if we were to make an object let classmates equal, and then let's do some newer classmates. We've got Matthew, who's 26. Then we've got Shelby, who's 29. So if I want to access Matthew, what would I do? I would have to say classmates.Matthew. And I get the value of 26. So it kind of looks a little bit weirder. I kind of like this. Really makes it seem like a data structure, which is really kind of what I want this to look like. Again, classmates.Matthew. If I'm viewing this as a data structure, this looks more like, again, this is the property, as it says right there, property Matthew. It just sounds a little different, not as intuitive, I guess you could say. And again, you got to be careful because of the default keys of an object, things could clash. Like we said earlier, there's this toString property of objects. Also, that's a function. So would I have to call it like this with the parentheses? Object. Right, so I couldn't, because of the default property of toString, I couldn't have my own property toString. I mean, I don't know why you would, but just something to kind of keep track of, you know. And REPL decided to freeze up. Hopefully my stuff didn't disappear, but if it did, that's okay. We'll just refresh that. But I wanted to show you guys also one thing. Here's the JavaScript documentation on this. Iterations. Iterating a map with a for of. So here they kind of do use this destructuring a little bit. Key value. And you can see if you have access to the keys and the values if you use a for of. Makes it pretty nice. We use this for each. Oh, okay, look at that. So the documentation even has this a little bit backwards. Value and then the key, do you guys remember? And well, it doesn't show it anymore, but I kind of had this backwards. I had the key here and then the value here. And that way you still have access to the key and the value. It makes it really nice when you want to access both of those. Yeah, just both key and values if you're looping through this map. And that comes in a lot of handy sometimes. And then relation with array objects. This is basically talking about how you can convert that array into the map. Now look here that it's a 2D array, so it's an arrays within an array. So you'd KV array, KV 0, 0. So 0 would be this first index, and then 0 would be, again, the first index of the first index, so key 1. But just a little bit about maps. And sorry, this kind of, it might come back. But that's really all I wanted to show you guys. Apologize for my computer being a little slower. But a very cool data structure that I like to use a lot. Very nice for just a quick lookup. You can just go get a value if you know the key. You don't have to loop through to find a value. Unlike an array, and it has certain advantages over arrays, and maybe even arrays have certain advantages over maps when you would want to use one or the other. But this is pretty nice that I can just I can set, I can delete fairly easily. If you were to use an array, things would not be this straightforward. You would have to go to that certain index, assign the value at that certain index, or you would then have to remove a value at that certain index. You don't have to specify a size of this map. And maybe this is more Java world where you would have to assign a size to an array. A map, you don't have to set a explicit size to it. So maps are pretty cool. And we'll just leave off there. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to go over anything. I know there's stuff that maybe I'm not clear about. I'm trying to get better at these coding videos. Even though I haven't done any in a long time, lots of other stuff happening with Chee-Tash. So just to give you guys an update, some exciting stuff coming down the pipe. I think I've said that quite a few times, but yeah, we've got some things coming up. I'll try to do these coding videos as much as I can. And hopefully I've been clear or answered some of your questions on maps, and let me know if you have any more. I'm happy to discuss it in the comment section below. Well, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. And that's going to do it for this episode of Chee-Tash. My name is Chris. I really, really appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Till next time. Take care.